The final highlight of the Le Mans Virtual Series for 2022-2023. Round 5 is the big one. The 24 hours of Le Mans Virtual. It is here that our championship titles will be decided. And for the third year in succession, one team in LMP, one team in GTE will go away with the biggest win in motorsports virtual racing. Hello everybody, welcome to coverage of the run-in to the great race. We start with qualifying and then we have a race for some influencers, which will be highly entertaining later this evening before we get into the race itself proper. I'm Martin Haven, I'll be with you throughout the race weekend. Delighted to be joined in the studio as we kick things off by Ben Constantiouris. And Ben, as always, whether real or virtual, when we get to Le Mans, there's nerves, anticipation, excitement in the air, because this is such a huge deal for everybody involved.
Apprehension, no doubt. It really is so exciting to see such an incredible level of competition coming together, and ultimately in qualifying trying to go as fast as possible. They're not trying to preserve anything, they are simply trying to set the fastest time. We've seen all season just how close it has been in every qualifying session. Le Mans is a circuit so much longer than any other circuit we go to, but still, I guarantee it's going to be very, very close indeed. All cars on track for our qualifying session that kicks off our program tonight. We will have Hyperpole later on in the season, and this is how the championship overall works.
The Le Mans Virtual Series uses the R-Factor 2 platform and includes a 40-car field, which has been increased to 45 for the series finale. Each race features multi-class racing between Le Mans prototypes and GTE cars, and there will be driver changes, dynamic weather, and day-to-night transitions. The calendar began in the Middle East for the 8 hours of Bahrain at the Bahrain International Circuit, and then we travelled to the Temple of Speed for the 4 hours of Monza in October, a visit to the Ardennes in November for the 6 hours of Spa-Francorchamps, and then we flew stateside for the 500 miles of Sebring in December to round out the year. The 24-hour Le Mans Virtual is closing the season with a January finale. Each team roster comprises of 4 drivers, with 3 being required to participate in each race. Teams must field 2 FIA-graded drivers in their lineup for Le Mans Virtual. Each driver will need to meet minimum and maximum driver times, and each team will work to create their own setups to optimise performance and strategy. Full simulation includes fuel usage and tyre wear, so strategy will be the key to success. Mechanical failures such as engine and brake failure can and will play a part, with error damage caused by collisions affecting the car's performance, but they can be repaired in the pit stops. The race director and stewards will oversee on-track action and will apply penalties if necessary. And the prize pool of $250,000 across the series, half of which will be separated between the series itself and half will be awarded for the 24-hour finale. It will be split equally between both categories, and the top 10 finishers receive prize money according to their positions in the series standings.
It's not all about the cash. The kudos is much more important for our professional race drivers and for our pro sim racers as well, because that's one of the great deals about the Le Mans 24 Hours Virtual and the Le Mans Series, is that it's a combination of real-world talent and sim racing talent, and they come together uniquely here in a way that has just never been done before. And Ben, that's part of the delight of this, is that you get this sort of rolling roster. I mean, where else do you get guys who are 17, 18, 19 years old racing against a double Formula One world champion? I mean, that's just not possible in any other form of motorsport.
And it was always that, or initially, that those real-world drivers would come in and be the weak link to the Pro Series drivers. Now these teams have trained up our pro drivers and sourced pro drivers that have real-world experience but are pro sim drivers, so that we really have a level where there is no weak links out there. And the works teams and works manufacturers that we know, such as Porsche and Mercedes, are coming to join that party, and effectively some of these guys are now works drivers out there. And last time out at Sebring, so many of them had the opportunity to actually feel what it was like to be part of the Le Mans Virtual, even though it was only a 4-hour-ish event.
Well, that was the last round just before Christmas last year. Let's take a look at what happened at the Classic in Florida.
Highlights from the 4th round of the Le Mans Virtual Series this year, as it was off to Sebring, to the 500 miles of Sebring, the great American race, and that run down into the first corner. Already a bit of drama for Rocket Esports, who were spinning courtesy of a lack of rear wing, but the drama was in the GTE category. 3 and 4 wide constantly as they raced down towards turn 2 and 3. Team Redline battling out with YAS Veloce and BS Competition. A bit of a squeeze going up and over the curve, though was forced by Redline, as was Simsa and D-Station in the background. Another look as to what happened to Rocket. A bit of contact on the rear end on the initial race start. A battle between Proton, Coanda and BS Competition for 3rd position would see the 89 hanging on to that 3rd position, allowing the top 2 to clear off, as one of the Vanwall cars was squeezing off R8G in that number 8. They get a drive-through for that. The 966 having a bit of a spin with Nuno Pinto behind the wheel into the clutches of the 888 R8G car, and a bit of a squeeze as well for that Ferrari from Fira Pro Drive going down into the final corner. Marcel Chinchik out into the weeds at the first corner with a big slide and a big spin up and over the grass, as we see the move down the inside for the race lead. The 77 taking it over from YAS Veloce as ARC Bratislava got into the rear end of Rocket Esports. A couple of dramas heading down into that corner. A couple of dramas here up into Cunningham as the AMG cars got into contact. Williams being spun out by Petronas, and then Mexico Racing Team later on a spin ahead of the battle for 4th position. Max Verstappen was getting ready to get into the number 1 car, as was Romain Grosjean in the number 18, and unfortunately the number 8 of Rougier had a bit of a spin into the barrier and a large bit of contact. The switch for the race lead in GTE would see the 71 of Enzo Benito getting over on Lorenzo Arisi, taking it, and then there was this battle between Max Verstappen and James Baldwin, beautifully read by Baldwin, getting up and under Max Verstappen in the first corner and taking over the final spot on the podium. It wasn't enough though to catch the 23 and the 20, as Porsche Coanda would take a 1-2 in Sebring. BMW Redline taking their 2nd consecutive victory here in Sebring. Porsche Coanda confirmation as that victory, as we'd roll down to see some of the other drivers and teams. Sim Marinello just with 2nd ahead of BMW Team BS Competition.
It was impressive stuff from Porsche Coanda Racing, a 1-2 for the team. And bear in mind that those drivers last year were racing in Porsche GT cars. And that is reflective of what's happening in real life, because as Porsche's hypercar program comes on stream for 2023, heading into the centenary race at Le Mans, they're doing exactly the same. Their racing talent, the Porsche factory racing talent, is coming from their GT drivers stepping up to the big time. It's worked well for them before. They've had GT drivers winning Le Mans overall, so there's no reason why that might not happen again. And of course, everything about this virtual Le Mans is as close as humanly possible to the real Le Mans. And that's from the race direction, from the rules to the organisation, the BOP, all the way down to the legendary track itself. So let's take a look around the Circuit de la Sarthe. Well, Ben, for lots of fans, this is one of the absolute classic racetracks. If you stop any man or woman or child in almost any street in the world, they could probably name you one of 3 races: Indy, Monaco, Le Mans. And this, for us, is what it's all about.
A small medieval town in the middle of France that has become so legendary and the home, really, of motorsport. As you said, it's so many of this circuit is driven as road on a daily basis, just shut down during the race weekend. The circuit at the end of the lap, the Porsche curves that we are seeing behind us now, that is permanent circuit, but permanent circuit only ever used for the 24 hours and the classic. They come on to what is known as the Bugatti circuit, and of course so much more racing, like the 24-hour truck race, the 24-hour bike race, MotoGP. Use that bit of circuit, but don't use everything. The circuit has been laser scanned to millimetre perfection for RF2. So these guys on circuit who are going out for qualifying now are feeling exactly what the guys in the real world would feel, minus a few truck tracks that develop over the year.
But they're feeling the same butterflies, the same nervous apprehension. 71 Team Redline BMW in the GT class for our GTE cars. That is absolutely the gold standard car again this season. They have had so much success. They've qualified so strongly. And if they don't qualify on pole here, it would be a little bit of a surprise. Kevin Siggy, the man who's done so much in that car to get them to the top of the pile. And pretty much decent money, I would think, on Porsche Coanda being in their swing as well. They've sort of had a bit of a realignment of the stars in their 2 cars. and they have top-loaded car number 20, the better placed in the championship, with all the big hitters. So car number 20 in LMP, where everybody uses the same Oreca 07 chassis, and maybe the Redline BMW would be the ones to look out for. But of course, you know, it's qualifying. If you get a clear break in traffic, if you don't, it can make a big difference, even on a circuit this long. This
is a different format to the qualifying that we've seen throughout the series, and this mimics what we see in the real world these days for the Le Mans 24 Hours. We have all the cars out on circuit, all 45, which means LMP2 cars are going to have to deal with traffic potentially on their fast laps. And then the best will go into our Hyperpole session to set the first couple of rows of the grid, and that's later on this evening. So we are seeing all 45 cars here, but we will only see a couple of cars in our Hyperpole later on. Crucial, if possible, to have your team watching out for spaces on track to place your car perfectly and hopefully get round a full lap without catching any slower traffic.
Yeah, it's pretty tough to plan your journey out of the pit lane, because your allocation in the pits is where it is. And if you're right down near pit in, then there'll be 30+ cars in front of you as you head out on track. So you either try and hang back a little bit, and that unfortunately costs you time on track, which may be vital, or you try and work your way up the order. And there are just some of the drivers that will be racing this weekend. 45 cars across our two classes, 4 drivers per car mandated, so that's 180 drivers using 163 different individual sim rigs. Now, that means some drivers will be using the same sim rig as some of their teammates, maybe the same sim rig as all of their teammates. And of course, when you're racing at home, when you're competing in anything, whatever it is, a first-person shooter or racing game or whatever, you try and customize your controls to suit yourself, what you like best. And that's how Formula One works. You customize your car to how you want it, not how your teammate wants it. In endurance racing, it's all compromise. 4 of you have to work in the car, not just one. It can't be set up for the best driver. It has to be set up as a mixture of what works for everybody, and that will be exactly the same on shared rigs. For a lot of our drivers, though, wherever they are around the world, and we've got drivers in 35 different countries across 6 different continents, then it is going to be about personalization. Well, let's take a look. Here's a great example of one of the different concepts that we had for bringing teams in, that Alex Young, the former Grand Prix driver from Malaysia, put together an all-Malaysian team. They had a great season last year. They've had a really strong run this year as well. And they've been joined as well with the likes of Team Mexico, a team all from China, with not just brand loyalty, but actually national teams have come in as well, promoted or set up by their own drivers. So 1 out lap, and now we're going to see the first flying laps begin. And of course, because it is a 16-kilometre circuit, they don't come in every couple of minutes. Watching Franco Colapinto in the Floyd Vanwall-Burst car number 4, purple first sector.
And is it amazing, Martin, to see a real-world driver like Franco, who has real-world experience of Le Mans 24 Hours, being chosen by the team to do their qualifying?
Yeah.
Because they obviously have their sim drivers as part of that partnership, but they've decided that he's the man to do qualifying. We've seen that quite a few different drivers have ended up being selected for this session.
Well, there's some real-world guy in the Netherlands called Max Verstappen who's been selected by his team as well. Max has been doing a lot of work on the sim in the build-up to this. There's been a number of practice races before we got into the race weekend proper, and Max has been doing those this week. So we've got the Formula One World Champion, we've got the Formula 2 Champion, Felipe Drugovich, as well. Do we have a Formula 3 champion in the team, so in the crew? So we've got Formula 3 champion with a whole host of international single-seater champions. Matthias Bech running out a little wider there than he would have liked. So he's driving from home in Switzerland. See him there in the inset.
I get the feeling actually that potentially they're having to use a pro driver in this qualifying session. Every single team has entered a driver that has real-world experience. For them, actually, I'd say that for the most part, names are changing now, and in fact, we have seen a change in our Le Mans Cup team. So Sebastian Priaulx was aboard that car, and we now see Sean Arnold getting aboard. So it looks as though you can do driver changes as well across this half-hour session, and we will soon have our first times coming up on the board from the LMP cars.
We're talking about that entry particularly, the Le Mans Virtual car number 24, and the top 2 drivers in points in the Le Mans Virtual Series, the Le Mans Virtual Cup, at the end of their season have earned themselves a drive in the guest car, which has been entered by Motorsport Games. And their 2 pro drivers, well, last year when we were in the studio in Paris, their 2 pro drivers were there in the studio with the game's winners, and it is another father and son combination. That seems to be a bit of a theme. I wonder now, having said that, whether we're going to have a father and son combination as mandatory for the Cup team. This year it is Guernsey duo Andy Priaulx and Sebastian Priaulx. So Sebastian has been racing in GTs in the States over the last couple of seasons, British GT as well, and Andy Priaulx, of course, multiple World Touring Car champion for BMW, also went on to win the Nürburgring 24 Hours, the Spa 24 Hours, and a whole host of other endurance races with BMW as well.
And founded the was quite an early adopter to using the simulator. Outside of major Formula One teams that had their own facilities, he developed his own performance centre, actually here at Silverstone, just next door to where we are. And that was a place where drivers who didn't have access to simulators before COVID, back in the early 2000s, could come and practice and could get laps in. And for the likes of Le Mans, where they have very limited amounts of practice and testing across the rest of the year, those drivers going to Le Mans for the first time were able to practice there. And then remember, it was only probably about 10 years ago, Le Mans just said to every rookie that took part in the rookie session, they had to do a sim session.
You now have to go to Paris and pass, effectively, a sim test before you're allowed to try it in the real world. Well, Matthias Besch, fastest of all so far, car number 8. Just behind him, Max Verstappen, and 1700ths of a second between the top 2 times. Car number 20, the first of Coanda Porsches, Anchan Juven, the Turkish driver, he is 3rd fastest. Sami Matti Trogan, the Finn, is 4th quickest in the 53 AMG Team Williams Esports machine. In the GT class, it's Loic Hartog who's fastest of all in the 77 car. That's one of the 2 Proton Coanda GT cars. Coanda is Porsche's bespoke factory sim racing team, and combined with Proton, who run GT cars for Porsche in the World Endurance Championship. 77 car is fastest of all. From Alex Smolyar in the 888 R8G Ferrari, and the Ferraris have been coming on very strong this season after the car was actually created and introduced initially into R Factor 2 specifically for the very first virtual Le Mans 24-hour race. It didn't exist on the platform before there. Ferrari were very, very keen to be involved during lockdown and helped the game physics engine creators to build a Ferrari, and that with a little bit more development work and BOP that's changed, along with a couple of changes in the game, in the platform over the winter and into this season, and change in tyres as well, change in the dynamics of the tyres has brought the Ferrari right to the fore. Ferrari is very much a contender. Rudy Van Buren is doing qualifying in the 71 Redline BMW. That's currently 3rd fastest, and that car is a definite contender everywhere it goes this season. But there on the timing pylon, you can see 18 of our 22 LMP cars. Again, all using the Oreca 07 chassis, but with a huge influx of hypercar cars from Le Mans Hypercar and LMDH. I can't believe it's long before those are going to start to appear on R Factor 2 as well. There's going to be such a clamour for who doesn't want to race a Ferrari in the top class, who doesn't want to race a Porsche in the top class, who doesn't want to race a Glickenhaus or a Isotta Fassini or a... I mean, there are so many new cars coming. It's going to be just an absolute golden era for sports car racing.
Well, the Vanwall is already available on R-Factor 2. It's the only model of the hypercars that you can drive on R-Factor 2. But it's great to see that that process has already begun.
Yeah.
We've obviously got Peugeot entered our Le Mans Virtual for the first time. Great to have Peugeot Sport with us, and we'll have Hayley Edmonds at Peugeot across the weekend. So she'll be supervising and talking to the team over there, who are very new to the world of sim racing. And we had in the first edition Peugeot, Toyota enter. Yep. And of course we now have Mercedes and Porsche in the top class, in the LMP class for this edition, of Porsche with that massive amount of experience from the partnership with Coanda that they have this year. And as you mentioned earlier, Martin, mixing everything up in terms of driver lineups. Weirdly, the car that won Sebring, which was the less strong car, has now got even less strong drivers. But in the championship, it was the 20 that was doing better, and that's why they've, as you say, they've loaded up that car with real support, because there's still so many points available for the Le Mans 24 Hours that they could still win the championship if they have a great result over the other drivers.
Yeah, top 8 cars in the overall season standings in LMP could mathematically still win the series if they have the right result and their rivals don't. Little bit of on board with the Marla car is in trouble. Into the gravel, the Le Mans Virtual Cup car. So who is at the wheel of 24? Let's have a look.
They haven't done a lap, so they'll be way down. Sean Arnold is aboard that car.
He was, yeah. There's been quite a few pit stops, actually. Not sure if there have been an awful lot of driver changes.
What we have seen is a lot of name changes, Martin, for us. So my initial suggestion that all of the real-world drivers were driving in this session is not true, and we have now seen most of the guys that we would expect to see in the car, like Josh Rogers, like James Baldwin, like Luke Bennett, Jernej Simoncic. All those names have become household names to anybody who follows this, are now putting in their laps. The fastest lap is Marcel Sinchik in the 8, and he's nearly 0.2 of a second to the good over Jeffrey Rietveld, who is in the 1. So no Max Verstappen in qualifying this evening. Still getting up to speed after coming back from holiday.
Well, Max's name was on the screen right at the beginning, and everybody has done a few pit stops. So there's a replay of 24 getting it very wrong into the Porsche curves.
There was a lot wrong there.
Yeah. Yeah. Very, very wrong indeed. So easy to do. The speed of approach there as you run down to turn right instead of going past Maison Blanche, the old White House section, is really very high indeed.
Halfway through the session, we've got most drivers in LMP setting a time.
Yep.
And they are on their out laps now to set another time. I don't know if they're going to get 3 fast laps in here. I think they might only get 2 fast laps across the whole session. But they've got fresh tyres on, of course, for this next attempt. So Marcel Sinchik is in the RHG on the pole. Team Redline's Jeffrey Rietveld second. Josh Rogers for Porsche in 3rd. And then Wisniewski for Williams AMG in 4th, ahead of the AMG Petronas car, the full works team, in 5th position. That's your top 5. Not
at all confusing, is it?
A little bit, because there is a Williams car that isn't an AMG, and there is an AMG car that isn't a Williams. Yeah. But there's a bit of both, and that, of course, that's the car that won, or that's the partnership that won the very first Le Mans 24 Hours Virtual.
Yeah, absolutely right. Well, looking here at the Simsa Racing Ferrari. And currently, Charlie Collins is at the wheel of 77, the Porsche that is fastest in GT. Erhan Yojovski in the Ferrari 888, he's in that car. And Kevin Siggy has taken over the 71 BMW that is currently 3rd fastest. And not much between them in terms of speed. Again, 4-driver lineup. They won't all drive in qualifying. They won't. Only 1 driver in the top 6 cars in each class goes through into Hyperpole, and that will be a single lap, 1 flying lap, out, fast lap, and that's your time done. And you have to be very sharp about it as well. There is very little time in Hyperpole. You have got to be absolutely on the money. So that's a really high-pressure situation. And with 16 kilometres, you can be way up here and then miss your braking late into the Ford chicane, or huge moment there, completely misjudged what the speed of the car in front was. 101, the GR Esports car. That's the one that we were riding on board with. And who is at the wheel of that? Oh dear.
One of those.
That's Adam Maguire, so one of their pro sim racers.
And one of the cars that has yet to set a time, so bailed out of its first attempt.
And it's got damage as well from that impact. And unfortunately, the car he hit, which I didn't identify, that had gone past pit entrance and has not come into the pit. So there'll be somebody else with a lot of damage going very slowly.
Let's not forget that whilst we get excited about the top 6 here, that's going to be reset for Hyperpole later on.
Yep.
So really setting the grid and getting into Hyperpole, we need to be focusing outside of the top 6, as you can see on the left-hand side there. AMG Petronas, at the moment, just had a few cars setting lap times, missing out right now.
By how much? Look at that. They are just a couple of thousandths out of Hyperpole. 0.438 back is the car in 6th, 0.6460, so what's that, 12 thousandths of a second difference. So that's what 63, the AMG Petronas driver James Baldwin needs to find. 16 thousandths over 16 kilometres. He's got to find a thousandth of a second per kilometre. And you think, is that even I mean, how do you find more pace by that tiny fraction? You've just got to...
It's where sim racing is just remarkable, because these guys are able to extract those hundredths of a second, knowing they've made a little mistake here. Let's not forget that if you're racing for real at the Le Mans 24 Hours, you don't get testing up until the race week. Yes, there's test day, but outside of that, you get very limited time. These sim racers are able to jump on their rig at 9 o'clock in the morning and get off it at 9 o'clock in the morning the next day. They have infinite ability to practice, and therefore they do so, especially in a championship like this, which has so much prestige and money behind it. Interestingly there, Jeffrey Rietbold going into the pits, that was a fast lap that he's bailed out of. So he is hoping to get out, change tyres, and maybe get another lap in, because he didn't feel that was fast enough. And compared to what's happening behind with Josh Rogers, who is right here, he was right. Rogers, the first man in Sector 2 to go below the 80-second mark. I'm not sure Rogers is going to bail out of this one unless he makes a mistake in the Porsches.
No, and our current fastest car is going faster again. RHG's car number 8.
Oh, he's moved the bar another 2 tenths away.
So Marcel Cincic with a green Sector 1, green Sector 2 and purple Sector 3. Mac Backham moves up to second. Josh Rogers up to pole.
By half a second.
Wow.
Wow.
That is a big lap from Josh Rogers. He's a real Porsche GT specialist. Well, let's take a look at the incident here. 2 very much slower cars. Still didn't identify. There's far too many green and white cars. Still didn't identify who he hit. Let's see if we can make it out from here. Comes past the Marla BMW. Yellow lights are on, so he shouldn't actually be overtaking anybody at that stage anyway.
Yeah, but yellow lights are on because people are queuing up.
Yeah, but yellow lights are on anyway, so he should not be trying to overtake anybody.
Yeah, you're right.
So actually, not only does he go into the pit lane, he should get a penalty for contact, and he should get a penalty for not obeying the yellow flags.
The yellow flags are out automatically because cars are driving so slowly. They're deemed to be
a danger.
And so it's a bit tricky when you're on a fast lap with all those cars queuing up to be on a slow lap.
But it's not tricky at all. The rules are really clear. You can't pass under yellow.
Great fun in the bar tonight with Eduardo.
Might be a while until Eduardo gets finished tonight, actually. And don't forget that this is only qualifying. There will be similar incidents in the race that need a lot of discussion. 77, Charlie Collins aboard the Proton Coanda Esports 911. And that is currently the fastest car in its class, as you can see there on the left of the graphic. Purple Sector 1, purple Sector 2. This is going quicker again, ahead of Erhan Yayovski. And Lasse Sorensen up to third. So we've got Porsche, Ferrari, Aston Martin. Kevin Siggy's been in the pits in the BMW, so clearly the 71 car, he's still not happy with it. But Charlie Collins, this looks like another really good lap. Porsche currently fastest in GT and overall. So Charlie Collins comes across the line to extend his advantage. It's now 4.2 seconds ahead of the second fastest car in the field.
But
that is an astonishing margin.
Yuyovsky has gone faster, I believe.
Yeah, personal better lap for him in the first sector, not in the second. Lasse Sorensen third, Kevin Siggy now out of the pits, but it'll be another 3 or 4 minutes before he comes round to start a flyer. Yuri Kasdorp fifth in his Porsche, and the sixth place car is also a Porsche, Kevin Van Doren, who is just leaving the pits. So Kevin's, Siggy and Van Doren both making minor changes. You can't adjust the car's setup when you're out on track. You have to do it in the pit lane. You can think about it and program in the changes, but you can't actually do it. Well, real world and virtual world converge in so many different ways. Graf Racing, who spend a lot of their time racing in the European Le Mans Series, the feeder series for the World Endurance Championship, all racing, also racing here. And this is Marcus Sohom, a Dane. One of 2 crews, this, that has got a female driver in the lineup. Of course, physicality of the cars is less of a factor in the virtual world than it is in the real world.
So many young females coming into Le Mans and really impressing. Lily Wadou,
yeah,
partnering Sébastien Ogier in the first part of last year before Le Mans, and really impressing Richard Mille team.
And she's now a big part of the Iron Dames lineup as well, as they go from being a GTE AM team to being a factory Lamborghini operator in 2024. So that's a phenomenal opportunity for the 4 women who race for the Iron Dames across their various different categories. But in that Graf Racing car, Lubov Ozretskaya, I'm going to get that right before the end of the day, the Kazakhstan driver. So she is one of our 2 female drivers, Beitske Visser being the other one. So
yeah, Beitska's been a real mainstay of the Mahler Racing team,
yep,
for a good few years now. Any chance that she has of getting into her rig, and we see her in Le Mans Virtual and plenty of other championships across the virtual world.
And of course, compared to actual world motorsport, it is so cheap to do, isn't
yes.
it? I mean, you know, apart from the fact that you can race in the morning in Indianapolis, race in the afternoon at Monaco, and race in the evening at, I don't know, pick a track out of the sky in a virtual world where you couldn't even get from one to the other in the real world. It just makes life, it makes it so much easier to get involved. It makes it so much easier and cheaper to actually compete.
We also saw Aichang Guven earlier in the year doing a real Super Cup or German Carrera Cup race, and then jumped straight into the rig that was at the circuit so he could compete with us.
Yeah. Well, you know,
why not?
Racing's racing, exactly. If you've got the time in, I mean, it's like Gordon Murray going to Las Vegas and between practice sessions going off to buy a jukebox. You know, if you organise your time properly, you can do these things. Josh Rogers, Marcel Cincic, Matt Backham, the top 3, and then Luke Bennett, Jack Baldwin, and okay, up into 6th place now is the R8G car, and it was Ulas Ozildirim, the Turkish driver, who was at the wheel of that. Those are the guys that currently are going through into Hyperpole. But look at the top group, 4 tenths back to second, 30 thousandths from second to third, 13 thousandths from 4th to 5th, and only 44 thousandths from 5th to 6th, and only 79 thousandths out of that Hyperpole group now is the number 53 from AMG Williams, and another 25 from them, 38 and 54 thousandths of a second. I mean, tiny margins around the fringes of Hyperpole. Right now, they're all on an outlap. there's going to be one flyer to try, and apart from maybe the 20 Porsche, all of the others are up for negotiation.
I mean, the thing is, you say it's close, and we were expecting it to be close, but it's nearly half a second between first and second. That was an amazing lap from Josh Rogers.
That's the outlier.
Yeah.
There is not another gap in the entire field that is remotely that close.
No, exactly.
Remotely that large, rather. I mean, it's just ridiculous. 0.49, and then what's twice that? 0.8, 0.9 back. So the difference between first and second is the same as the difference between second and basically 10th.
There's a lot of traffic here. Everyone has come out the pits at the same time. They're all touring around the circuit on the same piece of tarmac. Mato Homola for ARC Bratislava is on a lap, and he's got through that traffic, hopefully without being impeded. I'm not sure how many people are going to be complaining that they're impeded, but there's good possibility. You can see how twitchy this ARC Bratislava setup machine is.
Well, talking of Mato Homola, who's made his name racing touring cars, the Slovakian driver, he actually has the biggest gap in the field to the car behind him, other than first to second, because he's 0.27 of a second ahead of the car that's immediately behind him. Whereas Josh Rogers is 0.429 of a second ahead of the second fastest car at Le Mans. Honestly, in the real world, if you put in a lap that put you half a second up, people would be fating you for the next decade just for that one lap.
You'd be bopped, actually. It's what would happen. The rule makers would try and slow you down. Luckily, we don't have to do that here at Le Mans. I'm a bit concerned about this traffic jam, though. Marcel Chinchik is 3 or 4 cars back here, but everyone is so close together. A mistake is going to really cost them. There's James Baldwin in the silver reared Mercedes AMG car. He's about 4 or 5 cars back, and they're all queuing up here in the Ford chicane, hoping to get a little bit of space. There is the 23 Porsche. Now that is, where's that? 3rd fastest. But barely moving.
So listen, apart from Josh Rogers, let's assume that Josh Rogers, half a second clear of the field, is going to make it in, although he is out trying to set a lap as well. Everybody else basically in the top 15, 16, 18, 20, just there's not a tenth of a second between almost any of them. So it is just completely up for grabs. It's a one-lap shootout to get into the one-lap shootout. And all the previous time in qualifying has been about trying to perfect your setup. Well, here's the Pyro Pro Drive car.
Yeah, we've just seen a change in the GTE field because Kevin Siggy in the 71 Redline is on a completely different strategy to the rest, and he's got himself up into 4th fastest in GT Pro. But there's big gaps there too. 1.5 tenths between Collins and Yuyovsky, the 77 and 88, but then a second back to Imran Khan in the 89 before we see the car that leads by a country mile in the championship.
Well, we have a minute left on the clock. For some reason, the clock is not quite as accurate as maybe it ought to be. It's obviously running on Martin Haven time. So Charlie Collins fastest in the 77 Porsche, 888 Erhan Yuyovsky in the Ferrari, and then Ibrahim Khan up to 3rd in the 89 BMW. That's the BS competition car, the Zebra car, ahead of 71. Now, you only need to be in the top 6. So Kevin Siggy maybe not just showing everything yet. I mean, Josh Rogers has shown everything plus the kitchen sink plus double plus, and he's going quicker again. Right, 75 thousandths of a second. Just to put that into perspective, it takes 700ths of a second to blink a human eye. So that's 75 thousandths of a second, just over literally the blink of a human eye of an improvement in Sector 1. I mean, it's almost immeasurable. If you're doing it on a stopwatch, you'd never know that he'd gone any quicker.
Rogers leaving nothing on the table going to Mulsanne there. You heard just a little bit of a lock-up, presumably from the front right wheel, as he was on the very limit of going a little bit too deep into the corner. But that's where you need to be to improve on a time that's already amazing. I think he would probably be safe and not have to do this lap to get into Hyperpole, but he is on it anyway, and the car looks really, really, really planted underneath him.
Jajowski in the 888 Ferrari setting a purple sector in GTE out of Arnage, making it look an awful lot wider and quicker than it actually is, goes Josh Rogers.
Rietveld up into second position and halving the gap to Rogers. So there are faster times already coming in at the head of our field.
But Josh Rogers, still 2 purple sectors. Jeffrey Rietveld has gone quicker than he did before and has taken a checkered flag. Chinchich going quicker, Brabham going quicker, Bennett, a half a dozen others, but nobody going faster than Josh Rogers. This is going to be another faster lap from Josh Rogers. See there, Marcel Chinchich, 82 thousandths back to 3/10 back, and then at the line on target to be 15 hundredths back. But it's all about being in the top 6. So Redline goes to the top of the pile. There goes Josh Rogers, 7/10 clear, 3 minutes 20.524. That is insane from Josh Rogers.
Where is he finding this time? We've still got James Baldwin to come over the line to get himself into the top 6, and he misses out. Wisniewski has the 6th position at the moment.
Well, they all came flying across the line together. There is almost nobody left who has not completed a lap in the prototype class. Charlie Collins, purple sector 2 for the fastest car. Erhan Jajowski, purple sector 1. He lost a smidge to Collins, only a few hundreds. So Jajowski and Collins battling for the fastest lap time. Lasse Sorensen is in. Ibrahim Khan has parked it. He should be in. Kevin Siggy 5th. Kevin Van Doren 6th. But they've not got an improvement. The danger might be Yuri Kasdorp, who in the 99 Porsche is improving. But
and the 26 Ferrari has had such a great run at Sebring last time out.
Well, there are a few improvements further back, but Kevin Van Doren in 6th place on the bubble. Yuri Kasdorp behind, going quicker. And in sector 2, where he went quicker, he was 4/10 faster. So that's the danger then. Yuri Kasdorp in the 99 Porsche might bump the 88 Proton Porsche out. We'll have to wait and see.
Green is Jajowski coming to the line now. Is it going to be an improvement for him? Yes, by 1.5 tenths. So he goes provisionally fastest, but Charlie Collins is behind and will be coming through to the Ford chicane. Here he is right now to potentially go faster. It doesn't really matter. They're all into Hyperpole anyway, but for honours and for that confidence, this matters. Oh, a little mistake from Dora just ahead of them. Does that distract Collins enough? Oh, by 3 thousandths he misses out.
Wow, that's insane. Lasse Sorensen, Ibrahim Khan both parked. And Kevin Siggy 5th fastest. He's completed his lap. Kevin Van Doren looks like Yuri Kasdorp did not improve. So Kevin Van Doren has not completed the lap, but is 6th, and the next 5-6 cars behind have taken a checkered flag or parked.
Marla Racing just missing out 7th position for Mohamed Patel. He was an improvement on that last lap, but just missing out on getting into Hyperpole. So that looks to be qualifying itself done, and we can reset for Hyperpole a bit later on, but it's certainly not anywhere near as close as we were all predicting. Josh Rogers is in a league of his own.
Well, he is, isn't he? I mean, Lewis McGlade was saying 71 and 20 are his bets for pole position, and definitely on that outing, either everybody else in LMP was really just taking it easy, or Josh Rogers and the Porsche Coanda team of number 20 have found something very special indeed. They are the fastest of all. Top 6 of each category go through then into Hyperpole. That is a single lap, 1 flying lap, 1 driver per car for each of the 6. They will all go out on track together. It's not a kind of run in turn.
But they will have space.
They will. Well, they won't, because they'll all go rushing out together the way that drivers always do. So Porsche Coanda, Redline. Porsche Coanda's number 23 car, number 8 from RHE, Team Redline number 1, and the 53 AMG Team Williams Esports car. It just pips the AMG Team Patronus Esports car. Those will be the top 6 that go through. There are the rest of the qualifying positions. So 7 on down to 22 is where you start for this race.
18th there, Floyd Vanwall-Burst. That's a disappointment for the number 4 car, and the 444 only a couple of places ahead.
And the Le Mans Virtual Cup car ended up not setting a time in the end. Sean Arnold, he's had laps deleted there, I'm afraid, so disappointment for them. In the GT category, well, again, as we saw in LMP, big names in the frame, probably no major surprises. RHE on top of the pile, ahead of the 77 from Proton Coanda. ProDrive Fire, a great lap there in the end by Lasse Sorensen to get that car in. And then BMW Team BS competition with 2 BMWs, because Redline joined them in the top half dozen, and the second Proton Coanda Esports car. So 2 BMWs, 2 Porsches, 1 Ferrari, and 1 Aston Martin.
But a real disappointment from the Scuderia Ferrari Works Ferrari GT team at the very bottom of that GTE field. A lot has happened over the winter with them, and they've got some work to do. They can't this year say it's not the Ferrari, because there is a Ferrari right at the sharp end as well. Yeah,
Ferrari, I mean, and the Sim Maranello team as well, and Simsa have had good results, and there are times when the circuit doesn't really suit your car, and if that's Le Mans, then that can be a major handicap for you. Okay, so qualifying is done. We now know who is going through into Hyperpole, but before we get Hyperpole, we have more entertainment on the way. We're going to introduce that in just a few moments.
Total Energies provides the biofuel that leads to victory. However, during the Le Mans Virtual Series, well, virtual cars don't need real fuel, but drivers do. So for the Le Mans Virtual Series Grand Finale, Total Energies presents Pit Stop. Refueling bars made from grapes. The same ingredient we use to produce our 100% certified sustainable fuel for the FIA World Endurance Championship. Designed to feed and fuel drivers and help them become the greatest champions. Don't you agree, champ? Pit Stop. Virtual race, real power.
Welcome back, everyone. Well, what a qualifying session that was. You're joining us back here in the studio. My name's Chris McCarthy. Alongside me, the familiar face of Lewis McGlade. We have the influencer race coming up for you. We are going to take just a little bit of a break from qualifying before we go back to find out who is going to be starting on pole position in our Hyperpole. But before that, Lewis, we have our influencer race coming up.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun, of course. We've got to deal with a fair few big names from the world of sim racing. I know quite a lot of you will be out there for Lyubov Ozretskov-Sky. There you go. We can get that one out there. Nice to know. That's fine. Of course, Jaroslav Honzik. We've got Gamer Muscle out there as well. It's a great grid, but most importantly, it's just for a bit of fun. And we love that. As a support series to go out there and just enjoy the racing. It'll be a 5-lap thrash around the Circuit de la Sarthe. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, when we do race at Le Mans, we always have these support races, and this is basically going to be our support races. They're all going to be in the same car, unlike what we have in the Le Mans Virtual Series. So let's take a look at the car that they're all going to be racing in for this one. You can see it on the big screen behind us. It's a new car that came out over Christmas time in R Factor 2. Lewis, just talk us through a little bit about this one, a new car to R Factor 2.
Yeah, obviously recently released, but it's kind of one of those cars that we're all kind of used to seeing in the world of sim racing, and of course Motorsport Porsche 992 Cup car, 503 brake horsepower. It's a fantastic little machine to throw around. It is a little bit tricky, especially going through the Porsche curves around here. I think they're going to be in for a little bit of a test, despite only being for a bit of banter.
Yeah, I think they are. And we're going to have a rolling start to the race as well. They have qualified for the race whilst we had the other qualifying session going on. And now we are about to get going for 5 laps. Yes, 5 laps of racing. This is going to be a sprint race, so you want to be keeping out of trouble on that first lap. And of course, you just want to be staying in. Lewis, I'll hand it over to you to talk us through the start.
Yes, indeed. We'll hopefully avoid any carnage into the first corner, and we'll see exactly how things unfold. Anthony and Titus, who we're on board with now, I believe starting from pole position, and we'll begin that race up towards the Dunlop chicane. We are underway for the influencer race, for the all-star race here in the R-Factor 2 Le Mans Virtual Series. They're already 4 wide in that race up towards the first corner. Ross McGregor trying to hang on a little bit around the outside in that Napa car, the blue and yellow one that you can see. I think he might have just received a little bit of contact though with Rodriguez, sending it in. Some of the bollards being thrown up, but Chris, I think we're through nice and clean.
Yes, just about. Millward made a good start as well. Aidan Millward, that's the car we're looking at there, the pink livery car. You can see him now making his way through. He's got up to 5th place, but Manuel Rodriguez is the car on our screen, the orange-coloured Porsche car there, as they come through Tete Rouge for the first time and on to the Mulsanne straight, down towards the first chicane. We jump on board with our race leader, but will he be the race leader by the time we get down to the first chicane, Lewis? Because just behind us, Manuel Rodriguez is closing in as we get down to the chicane.
Yeah, it's just a 3/10 gap, but I don't think it'll be enough for him to hang on. It depends on whether Rodriguez actually goes for it by the time they get into the braking zone. Looks one way, back the other. Anthony Titus is going to hang on, but it's all about that in the background. Aidan Millward's got to worry about Nello Pastorino, who was quite close to going for something. Jaroslav Honzik as well in the backer shot. That's the one with the distinctive red on one side and sort of cyan on the other, I believe, is the car that Honzik's driving. And obviously, Jardier, one of the most famous people in sim racing. Not quite there with Junior Broad, but he decided not to do this race because he's focused on Le Mans Virtual itself. That's fine. I mean, it's great to see Jaroslav Honzik, by the way, on this platform. We don't typically see him racing on R-Factor 2, but he seems to be very much enjoying his little jump onto the platform and might well be going for a move back down the order.
Yep, a lot of friends of R-Factor 2 and of Traction, of course, so great to have all these guys racing out there. It's a fantastic field, guys and girls taking part. We're watching Manuel Rodriguez and we're going to jump on board with him now. Anthony and Titus did a great job through the chicane there, and as they head down towards Mulsanne corner, has slightly broken the toe now. The gap is just creeping up to under 1 second as we head in towards Mulsanne corner now, and Ross McGregor is closer to Manuel Rodriguez to what he is to the race leader now. Ooh. Oh, well, not anymore. Just as I say that, Rodriguez, McGregor there, sorry, in the blue and orange colours in 3rd place, getting it all wrong out of Mulsanne, Lewis, and now he's going to be under pressure there from Aidan Millward.
Yeah, Millward and McGregor, they would have raced a fair few times in the VMO TC UK Championship. They've had a fair few battles out on the circuit, and they're going for something here for a potential podium as they head down towards Indianapolis. At the moment, it's still Titus hanging on from Rodriguez. Still about 7/10 of a second. Titus is starting to pull away, but this is where it becomes very much a driver-specific circuit. We've dealt with straights and chicanes for a fair while, but as we head down towards the Porsche curve, that is going to change up ever so slightly, and this is where we might see some ebbs and flows.
Yellow flag going out. Now, we did have all drivers within 5 seconds, but I think the number 27, James West, might have been involved in that as well, but the number 27 car has sadly dropped back, unfortunately, there, Lewis, so looks like one car getting involved in a little bit of trouble as Aidan Millward is side by side there trying to get on the attack for 4th place. Nello Pastorino wasn't quite able to get through. We can see Aidan Millward there to the right-hand side of our screen, and you can see the focus in him there as he's wrestling with the car coming through the Porsche curves now.
He's one of very few people that's actually been in this room. Of course, he did do some commentary for us here. On the R-Factor 2 Formula Pro Series. I think it was round 2, maybe round 3 of the championship at Monza. He came along to replace John Monroe for a little bit of commentary action. So he does a little bit of commentary on the side as well as driving. He's doing quite well in this to wrestle it up there. Obviously losing out of position to Nello Pastorino going into the Porsche curves, but it is Jaroslav. I will correct myself. I did say that he was in the the black car with the sign and red highlights. Correction, Jaroslav Honzik is in, of course, a bright pink car, because let's be honest, if you are going to pick a car into a sim, you're going to pick a bright pink one. They weren't discussing it a little bit beforehand as to what cars they were going to pick. And I'm going to say it now, I'm actually quite impressed, because normally everyone goes, oh, that car looks good, and then everyone's in the same car. Thankfully, we're a bit more spread out on liveries on that.
Now, I'll tell you what, Ross McGregor in third is going to be under a lot of pressure when they come onto the Mulsanne straight next time. Henry Sinnick, one of the drivers who raced in the Le Mans Virtual Cup this season. We jump on board with him now as he comes up towards Tete Rouge. This is going to be a brave move. If he tries it, he will. He's to the left-hand side of screen there. What a move there from Sinnick there. Took him 3 corners to do it. And Lewis, you are clapping here in the commentary box. That was a fantastic move from Henry Sinnick.
It was just beautifully read. The cutback, the up and under to get past Steve Maz there. Next up is a voice you'll definitely know in the R Factor 2 community, because it's Paul Jeffrey.
Yes.
And that'll be the guy that Henry Sinnick is trying to attack next. Of course, Paul Jeffrey's been in the world of sim racing for a very long time. I don't even know how long. I don't want to be too mean to him, but I'm pretty sure it's more than a decade. Oh, and he's sliding out there a little bit. Henry Sinnick might have a bit of a slipstream, bit of drag race up towards the second chicane on the Mulsanne. I think this is going to be a slam dunk pass for the Estonian.
There you can see Sinnick now lining up the move on Paul Jeffrey, who moves aside and just allows Henry Sinnick to get the run on him as they come up towards the second chicane down the Mulsanne straight. We're following this one. There was a change for third. We'll come to that in just a little bit, but for now, Henry Sinnick through he goes. It looked like for a minute he was going to go straight on there, but got the car stopped just in time, and that is 7th place. A little bit further up, Ross McGregor is up to 3rd place. Nello Pastorino down to 4th place, and it's going to kick off for 2nd, and Manuel Rodriguez still within a second there of Antonin Titus as well. We're on lap 2 of 5. This race is going to go by very, very quickly, and Henry Sinnick now 3 seconds to go before he is next going to be on the move.
Here is Lyubov Ozretskov-Sky just ahead of Dan Suzuki. Of course, we will see Lyubov out in the race tomorrow as well, which is obviously great to see. But why not jump into this race today to, for one, get your eye on a little bit as to race conditions, but also it's banner, isn't it? Of course, you'll. Typically, she streams on iRacing under Love 46. Wonder who that's about. Love 46. Weird. But typically, it's more iRacing. But again, it's another one of these ones where we're doing races like this, especially with the influencers. It gets them out onto R Factor 2. It gets them racing around brand new cars around the Circuit de la Sarthe. Of course, lovely and laser scan. It's great to see. And this is that fight. Is this for 2nd? Because I think that is McGregor getting around the outside of Rodriguez. Yeah, that looks like it is, isn't it? Yes, there we can see McGregor fighting with Rodriguez. Maybe there might have been a slight mistake somewhere from Rodriguez, but Ross McGregor goes through in the predominantly blue and yellow coloured car there, and he goes through to take 2nd place. Great driving this from Ross McGregor. That move has cost him around 1 second to Antonin Titus, so the gap now 1.5 seconds, and they will have a couple more laps after this to try and close that down. We're watching Pastorino, who's still within that top 5. He's now looking at the back of Manuel Rodriguez. We can't count out Aidan Millward as well. He is also in that battle, as is Honzik as well. We haven't really mentioned him. Jaroslav Honzik in 6th place as well. Here comes Steve Maz down the inside, and that's going to be a change, or that's going to be him getting past Paul Jeffrey, so a change of 8th place there. Yeah, I think he might have said, no, after you, as there was the move down the inside from Steve Maz. But that's fine. Paul Jeffrey's going to have to worry about Neil Wood as well. Henry Sinnick's already checked out by nearly 3 seconds and might actually be, he's closing up to this. He closed up a second in the Porsche curves to this group. This race is not done because Ross McGregor's closing back up to Antonin Titus. There might have been a bit of early tyre conservation, which I wouldn't really say in a 5-lap race around here, certainly not in these cars, but alas, it might be the case. But this race is not done. I'm going to say it, honestly, before we went into this race, I was guaranteeing that we were going to have all the cars separated massively by the end of the first lap. That is absolutely not the case. Titus now being caught by McGregor is under a second, and there are a lot of gaps under a second, Chris.
Yep, Nello Pastorino we look at. Let's go to a replay then. Lewis, talk us through this one. This was Rodriguez then.
Yeah, it was slide a little bit too much power. I think it was actually more carrying too much speed going into the corner, sliding the rear end around, then getting on the power. Actually very similar to what Ross McGregor did, and that was what allowed McGregor to get back through. Of course, McGregor having that problem in the Mulsanne corner, that one going into Arnage, and there is the move to the outside. Very kind of reminiscent as to what Jerne Simoncic did in the first running of the Le Mans Virtual back in 2020, where he made a late move to get around the outside. Can't remember who it was on. I think it was one of the Williams Esports cars to get around the outside, going into the Porsche curves with like 19 minutes left to go. Absolutely thrilling.
Ross McGregor really closing in on Antonin Titus, and look at this queue of cars he is bringing with him, 7 in a row here that could still win this race within 3 or 4 seconds of each other. You can see them as they come out of the chicane now and make their way down towards Mulsanne corner. A great fight going on there. Here we see a little bit further back what it looks like. We've got Honzik and Millward here. We've got a yellow flag out somewhere in sector 2 as well, only briefly, so someone was in a little bit of trouble, but got that corrected very quickly as we watch Jaroslav Honzik now closing in on Aidan Millward. This is the fight for 5th place, but that's a great shot there. We can see all of the top 7 there still within the fight for the race win, especially, Lewis, if Ross McGregor can go and catch Antonin Titus and turn that into a battle, then it'll really kick off.
I was going to say, you might say that this is the battle for 5th, but I'd almost say that this is, especially around here, this is a battle for the lead.
Yeah,
because the
$100.
The slipstream is king around a Seglis. We've had a few sprint races around the Circuit de la Sarthe in the recent past. Let's see what happened to Lyubov Ozaretskovskaya coming down into the second chicane on the Mulsanne. Just a touch too much speed going in.
Oh.
Didn't scrub the speed off. Now that will be a confidence-destroying moment. Thankfully, it's not the same type of car as what she'll be driving tomorrow, but still, that will be a little bit of a hit confidence-wise.
Yeah, now next time she goes into that chicane, Lewis, it's that's going to be something playing on your mind going into the race.
Well,
I'll tell you what, we'll come back to that, because here we go. We've got a move going on here. This is Pastorino versus Rodriguez. This is for 3rd place. Lewis, this is an interesting position for Pastorino. Does he work with Rodriguez here, push him along, try and go after those top 2, or does he try and get by?
I think you've got to get by, especially because there are places around here where you can get by and not lose time, right? Going onto the Mulsanne, for example, when you're on there. Oh, who was that? Was that Millward? It was, yeah. Millward's out wide. It's cost him position to Honzik and to Henry Sinnick going through the final part, going into karting, or towards karting anyway. I don't know. It's just I'd go for a move when I can. That is not one that I would go for. Henry Sinnick giving a bit of a look into the forward chicane. It's a little bit tight, and you can make a pretty hefty crash and enter a barrier. Ask Max Verstappen about it. He's been in it. There is a big slide as well from Sinnick coming out of the final corner.
Couple of laps remaining, side by side, still there for 3rd place. It looked like as they came up towards the Dunlop chicane, and there goes Pastorino down the inside. This time he's definitely going to try and move. And going wide there was Manuel Rodriguez. Pastorino is going to have to try this one again. Rodriguez was ahead by the time they got to the Dunlop chicane, so I think he'll just about get away with that one. But you can see the gap this is creating now, Lewis, to Ross McGregor.
Yeah, he's lost a little bit of time. I think he's made a couple of mistakes the last lap. Did Ross McGregor going through the Porsche curves, because he's lost about 8/10 of a second. Another big slide from Nello Pastorino. That was a huge slide going through Tetris. This is looking backwards from Jaroslav Honzik to one driver who, looking coming into this, I was like, Henry Sinnick, surely he's got to be the one to win this. I mean, he's such a fantastic talent. Is Sinnick. Will he be going for a move? He's done a fair few races in the Le Mans Virtual Series, and he's got to get past one of the most positive people you will ever meet. It is Jaroslav Honzik.
He's having a good time, isn't he? Jaroslav Honzik, for someone who is under the pressure he is under. This is what it's all about, though. This is the support race. A little bit of fun for some of the friends of ours on the R Factor 2 platform, and you can tell, I'm sure most of them are doing exactly what Jaroslav Honzik is there. I'm sure they're all having a great time while this is going on. and we've got a lap and a half around more left of this, and that battle for third still continuing. You can see in the red there, that was Rodriguez just having a look, Pastorino, apologies, having a look down the inside of Rodriguez, still unable to make the move there.
I've got to say, for Henry Sinnick, he wants to get past Jaroslav Honzik and then get past Nello Pastorino, not for anything major about positions, but more so because, well, he's got to deal with Nello Pastorino quite a lot tomorrow, because they are teammates in the satellite racing car. Jaroslav Honzik, it's a few extra horsepower if you shake your hand in the air, obviously ducking in behind the wheel as you would in karting. That adds some straight line speed and sim racing as well. He's having a great time. Honestly, you'd think, oh, he's made a mistake there. You'd think he's only like this because it's a bit of a fun race. I'm like, no, I don't know what it is about Jaroslav Honzik, but he is like this, whether it is the stiffest competition in sim racing. He's absolutely balmy. I love the guy.
Absolutely fantastic. Here we go, though. Sinnick's about to get by him as they make their way now down towards Indianapolis. Henry Sinnick there just getting, just finding enough space to get down the inside. But we're going to see who is going to come out of Indianapolis in the lead. There we go, down the inside, and Henry Sinnick makes the place there on Jaroslav Honzik. And if he can get his foot down, he's got a chance here of making two more.
I did say, by the way, earlier on in the season, I said, mark my words, Jaroslav Honzik will do the Le Mans Virtual 24-hour. Unfortunately, he's not doing the Le Mans Virtual 24-hour, but I do genuinely hope one day he will do the Le Mans Virtual 24-hour. Because, for one, when it comes to influencers that are pretty fast, there are some that aren't. Not pointing any fingers, don't worry. But Jaroslav Honzik, when he puts his mind to it, he is mighty fast. One of the faster drivers in sim racing, more so on ACC. I know he's just lost a position there, and it's not really a great selling point, but still, he's a fantastic talent. And I say he's dropped back. It's not going to deal with him too much. He'll be down to the 6th position. He's got Aidan Millward closing in, but I think he might use Henry Sinnick to drift his way all the way up to Nelly Pastorino, and of course, onto the final lap of the race.
Here we go. This is for the final step on the podium so far. Yellow flag out somewhere in Sector 3 as well, but we're watching Manuel Rodriguez. Here's our race leader. We haven't really seen him for a while, Lewis. That's because he's managed to build up quite a lead, but that gap is coming down. Ross McGregor has brought it down from what was nearly 2 seconds to just over a second. He got a little bit out of shape there, Ross McGregor, out the final corner. But other than that, he is really starting to bring it down. I
would argue that Anton Titus, I know he started from pole position, but I'd argue that Anton Titus is not the fastest driver here, purely based on the fact that he's been caught by about 3 or 4 different people. But
consistency.
Has not made a mistake.
Exactly.
That is way more important. Even in a sprint race, you think, oh, it's a sprint race around the Circuit de la Sarthe. I mean, you don't have to be that consistent. No, you really do have to be consistent. You've got to be hitting your marks constantly, and you cannot make any mistakes. We've got James West on screen. He's trying to catch up to Dan Suzuki and Lyubov Ozaretskovskaya. You might think, James West, who's James West? It's Gamer Muscle, of course, who I've had a few bits of commentary with on Gamer Muscle. Again, another one who's, I mean, he's a bit of a banter. He loves it. He's more of a race room kind of guy. Obviously, he's done things all over the world of sim racing, but getting a top 10 around here is slightly out of the question. But 11th place is on the cards.
Here we go. This is the battle for third place. Pastorino there is not alone. Henry Sinnick. Well, we did mention, could he go after those 2 ahead? The question is yes. He has managed to complete that chase. And now he's side by side there with Pastorino. We can see Henry Sinnick to the right-hand side of our screen. Now the left, you can see him alongside Pastorino in the red liveried Porsche there as they make their way down towards the next chicane and getting in the toe there as we look back from third place. Manuel Rodriguez, but will he be able to stay there, Lewis?
Oh, I mean, quite literally, don't hit your teammate. Not now, not before one of the biggest races of your career is tomorrow. Henry Sinnick's trying to go for it, though, to get past Pastorino, of course, the driver that he'll be sharing with, and they're all being held up a little bit by Manuel Rodriguez. We've got a couple more really solid attempts coming up into Mulsanne. Indianapolis less so, Arnage less so, but somewhere in the middle of the Porsche cars, maybe a bit of a sand. Who knows what we're going to see?
Honzik is also trying to chase them down. Millward is trying to chase them down as well. Pastorino might just chuck one down the inside here. He's thinking about it, isn't he, there? Where Manuel Rodriguez has been scared off. He's gone wide, and there goes Pastorino. Thank you very much. He goes through into third place, Lewis.
Yeah, but this is going to be Henry Sinnick coming through as well. Obviously, Pastorino's got to give him some slipstream. I mean, there would be some arguments tomorrow if that wasn't the case. Rodriguez dropping a couple of positions then, courtesy of a mistake into the Mulsanne corner. He might be a little bit cautious because he might have some more positions coming through. Like you say, Honzik and Millward are there. Sinek's not quite close enough to do anything about Nello Pastorino as he uses all of the road surface coming down into Indianapolis. I mean, what a fight. A bit of a lock-up again, bit of a slide again. Is Pastor... Oh, Sinek's done the same thing, never mind.
Henry Sinek going wide there, but was still thinking about a move there, wasn't he? Pastorino just holding off, but now he's getting out of shape as well. This one yet to be decided. We still have the 4 chicanes coming up, all 5 of them in a line there. Titus leading by 3 seconds over Ross McGregor, and then we have this battle going on for 3rd place, being led by Nello Pastorino. Can he hold on, Lewis? I'll leave it to you to take us to the flag.
Yeah, this is going to be absolutely thrilling. Pastorino having a bit of a slide, turning it into a drift section into the Porsche curves, and Henry Sinek's going to be close to try and do something. He's got to give something a go coming down into the 4 chicanes. He almost had a look a lap before. I'm absolutely certain he's going to try something. Unfortunately, we're watching Titus. What a battle this is. Absolutely incredible, as Pastorino is using pretty much every bit of race surface he can use. Titus, though, into the final chicane has been perfect for 5 laps, 5 important laps, will win the all-star race here at the Le Mans Virtual. Ross McGregor will come across the line just about in second, but he might be slowing down because Pastorino's super close. Oh my goodness, Henry Sinek was there or thereabouts as well, and Antonin Titus at the top of the field. We didn't see him much. He was getting caught a few times today, but realistically speaking, absolutely perfect.
Wow, what an end.
What a race.
What an end that was, wasn't it? Absolutely fantastic there from Titus, McGregor and Pastorino doing an absolutely fantastic job. It was like he was just drifting all the way to the end, wasn't it?
Okay, so I will say with the R Factor 2, how it used to be with the older time model, nice donuts. Like to see it. We need to see more teams and more drivers doing donuts post-race. Thank you, Anthony and Titus, for celebrating properly, as well as McGregor in the background. But with the old time model that we used to have, you would tend to drift it a little bit. But a lot of the time model has been changing, courtesy of our partners over in GTE. They're giving us so much data to kind of like build up things and to move things forward in terms of time model. And we see that a lot in the GTE category, of course, in the Le Mans Virtual Series, and a lot in the LMP, don't get me wrong. But these kind of cars, you don't typically see that kind of drifting anymore. So to kind of see it every now and then, I'm like, I absolutely love it. Let's see what happens to Frank Conan. Whoa!
Whoa!
That is a sizable crash. Maybe it was like, so it's only a fun race.
There was,
and thankfully, it's sim racing, so no one gets
there we go. There was. Let's see. Let's try and end this. That was. I've never seen someone end like that.
The crowd took their eyes off of the car to look directly at us because they were so enthused by the ordeal.
Absolutely fantastic. Well, we said it was going to be a race for fun. And it was certainly fun to commentate on that, wasn't it? And I'm sure, hopefully, for all of you guys watching, it was fun to watch as well. I'm sure all the drivers enjoyed that one just as much as Jaroslav Honzik did when we went to him, right? It was absolutely fantastic. And thanks to all the drivers for competing. Thanks to those of you for tuning in as well. Shortly, we're going to be finding out who's going to be starting on pole position for the 3rd running of the 24-hour of Le Mans Virtual tomorrow. But for now, let's reflect more on that. I mean, Ross McGregor, at one stage, I thought he was going to be able to catch Titus, but we have to hand it to him. Titus did a fantastic job in those last couple of laps. Let's go through the results then. Titus, McGregor, then we had Pastorino just holding on. Sinek was 4th from Rodriguez, Honzik, Millward, Maz, Paul Jeffrey in 9th, and Neil Wood rounded out the top 10, Lewis.
Yeah, like you say, the other ones coming through, Lubov, Ozaretskovskaya, James West, of course, Game Muscle, Tom, Dan Suzuki, and Frank Conan with end of the season. I don't know if that's how I'd put it, but it was certainly a big crash indeed.
There we go. Well, for those of you who missed out on this one, you missed a cracking race. And let's go and remind you of how it all started, Lewis.
Yeah, indeed. Race down into the first corner. Antonin Titus taking over the race lead. Rodriguez almost losing out a little bit as he gained a spot on Ross McGregor. Tom having a bit of an issue straight in the early stages of the race and straight off into the barrier on the first lap. Manuel Rodriguez was closing, but a couple of slides wasn't helping his case. A bit of a slide for Ross McGregor in the background as well would drag him into the mix as they race their way up towards the Porsche curves. And for Manuel Rodriguez, he'd have to settle for dropping back into third position as they were still trying to chase down the race leader. McGregor with the move to the outside, he'd take it over. Lyubov Ozaretskovskaya was having a bit of an issue coming down to the second of the Mulsanne chicanes. And she visited the barrier. Did manage to make it to the end of the race, though. Jaroslav Honzik seeing Aidan Millward run wide, going through the final part, going through karting, and having an absolute whale of a time trying to fight his way up the order. Dan Suzuki struggling just a little bit, of course, sliding his way through and losing out. I think that was Ozaretskovskaya coming through as well. That was a pretty big send as Antonin Titus at the front of the field was starting to pull away. He had Ross McGregor quite close, but it was still the race victory for Antonin Titus when he came around the final corner. Our eyes, though, were all on that battle behind. It was absolutely incredible. Ross McGregor in second, Pastorino in third.
Well, that was absolutely fantastic. I reckon, do you reckon Dan Suzuki had practiced that? Because
No.
that was absolutely perfect.
No,
how he did that, a full spin to face exactly the right way again, and then off we go.
Speaking from experience, I've done that before. Not saying that I'm the same level as Dan Suzuki, because I'm definitely not. But I have made my fair share of mistakes around this circuit before, and it's a circuit that bites as much as straights and chicanes, and then you got the Porsche curves. It does bite. It is a hard circuit, especially in sprint format, which is not normally where we see it. But I think we should probably start speaking a little bit about quali.
Yeah, I mean, a high quality race there. Once again, thanks to all the drivers for taking part. We really do appreciate it. And of course, we'll see some of them tomorrow as well. Of course, we're going to have qualifying coming up very, very shortly. Hyperpole, that is. We did have the first segment of qualifying just a little bit earlier. Lewis, what did you make of what you saw then from the first segment of qualifying? We saw some changes right at the end. What did you make of it?
If I'm in GTE, I don't really care what car I'm in right now because they all look genuinely. Now, yes, I know all the teams will be messaging me in a few seconds being like, they're not all equal. I'm not having it. It was 3,000 of a second at the top of the session between the 888 and the 77. I think those two plus the 71 are really the cars that I'm looking at for pole position. And I did say coming into it that it was going to be the 71 on pole. And I'm going to stand by that. I am absolutely standing by that in the Hyperpole session. Kevin Siggy, his qualifying record in the Le Mans Virtual Series is crazy. 5 pole positions and has never qualified lower than third. I mean, that's a pretty good record. But in the LMP category, Josh Rogers, that number 20. I mean, that is an incredible lineup generally, with him and Mitchell de Jong finally being in the same car alongside Chan Ji-ven and Lauren Heinrich. But he looked dominant. He was up there for, I think it was 3/4 of a second at the end of that session. If I'm in LMP, I'm terrified of that car right now.
Was there any surprises for you, not in a good way, but teams who you think were out of position in qualifying there, the other way around? Or do you think we're roughly where we should be championship-wise?
It's a tricky one because realistically, yes, this is very cliche and all that. We've got such an unbelievably strong field that you've got to accept. And I'd already accepted, like, going into this, we are already going to have, like, you're going to have shocks. You're going to have people that aren't going to make it. Like, not everyone can be in the top 6. That's the joy of something like a Hyperpole, is that to get into that top 6 is incredibly difficult. And not everyone can. And so there are shocks. But it's because there were always going to be shocks. You are never going to get the top 6 and go, oh, yeah, well, that car didn't make it. So, there's always going to be those other teams. And, of course, as we know with Le Mans, you don't need to start from pole position to win or even to get inside the podium, because I'm pretty sure the Williams, the number 1 car, started from 12th to finish 2nd, if I remember correctly. It was something like that. So, who knows?
Yeah, so you're not out of it if you have a bad qualifying session, but it does help because when they all charge round towards the Dunlop chicane, being at the front of that definitely is going to help rather than being in a mid-pack of 45 cars. We
had a bit of drama on the start last year. As you kind of expect, we're always going to get a couple of little bits. That's fair enough. It is the expectation. It is quite tricky, obviously, as you go around that fast right-hander. I did say this before. There was, I think it's might have been two competitors on the grid. I'm pretty sure it was Arnold Skovli and Erhan Ijovski.
Right.
We were racing touring cars around here on the Bugatti segment, the shorter one. And I did cause, going into the first corner here, probably the largest wreck that I've ever seen. I did not realise we were 3 wide, and I killed everyone. So sorry about that. Still, that was 5 years ago, but still, sorry. It is an easy part of the track to make those issues, because everyone's like, oh, but it's a 24-hour race, so, you know, take it one corner at a time and don't take it too far. It's so easy, though, to be like, this is where my position is. This is where I need to go for.
Well, I think we've talked enough about Hyperpole. I think it's time to get the guys out there. We're going to be getting out there for Hyperpole in just a short break, and then we will be back for Hyperpole. First of all, though, before we decide who's going to be starting on pole position, we must thank our sponsors of this brilliant event.
During the 24 hours of Le Mans, Total Energies provides the biofuel that leads to victory. However, during the Le Mans Virtual Series, well, virtual cars don't need real fuel, but drivers do. So for the Le Mans Virtual Series Grand Finale, Total Energies presents Pit Stop, refueling bars made from grapes. The same ingredient we use to produce our 100% certified sustainable fuel for the FIA World Endurance Championship. Designed to feed and fuel drivers and help them become the greatest champions. Don't you agree, champ? Pit Stop. Virtual race, real power.
Hello everybody, welcome back to our coverage of qualifying as we now move into the Hyperpole phase, ready to lead into the 24 Hours of Le Mans Virtual for 2023. Martin Haven, Ben Constantinos, Lewis McGlade and Chris McCarthy. The gang's all here.
It's cozy in here.
It is, and we will be talking you through the entire race weekend along with Haley Edmonds and who else have we got on the team? Alex Brundle and an assorted cast of others who will probably appear and disappear during proceedings. So Hyperpole we're leading into, but let's just rewind a little fraction. For those of you who have just joined us, you can catch up on our YouTube stream with our influencers race. Blimey, that was fun, wasn't it?
It was good. We had a great time, didn't we?
Very good. Very, very good.
Well, we had a great time watching it outside, and it was highly entertaining. I'm all for that.
Yeah, a clean race as well, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was really, really good. Went down to the wire, and you could see that everyone really wanted to get on the podium. So, and I think some showing off in some good ways, and maybe some not so good ways right at the end.
Yeah, a little bit of a last lap tribute to Ken Block going on in the battle for third place. I thought, which was great. Yeah. I mean, and fantastic. And actually, what I thought was really entertaining about it was that all the drivers are in it. I mean, there's no money, there's no prize or anything. It's just for fun, but they all took it deadly seriously. And with that fun element as well. And actually, that's sort of what the Le Mans 24 Hours Virtual and the whole Le Mans Series Virtual has been about, is keeping the enjoyment in serious racing. And that's the whole thing. And Ben, that was really the hallmark right from the beginning. In lockdown in 2020, when we had the Le Mans 24 Hours Virtual, because there was no real Le Mans in the middle of the summer, and nobody knew if there was going to be one that year, that all the teams were okay, this is proper pro. And I think that was a real eye-opener to the pro racing drivers and teams, and also to the pro sim racers and teams, was just what was going on in the other half of the racing world.
It gave them a reason to focus their minds on something that they would usually put to real racing, to training for real racing, but with no knowledge of when we were going to go back to real racing. Then they had this thing that they could be part of. And for people who dedicate their lives to single-seater racing, Le Mans is not something that you come to until much later in life. And I think it educates a lot of young drivers in actually, do you know what? Le Mans is a good place to race as well as on our virtual race. This is our qualifying session that happened, about an hour ago now. And Lewis, were you surprised by the gaps? Because ultimately Porsche, 7/10 ahead of the rest of the field in LMP, was quite remarkable.
I mean, I was expecting that car, genuinely, I was expecting that car to be on pole position. I wasn't expecting it, like, obviously, I know we've not gone through Hyperpole yet, so we're getting ahead of ourselves. But I was expecting that car to be in that spot, but not by that much. Absolutely incredible. Obviously, there was a bit of traffic problems with the LMP and GTE being on track at the same time, but it added to the spice, didn't it?
Well, I think they sorted themselves out as well, didn't they? They eventually all spread out. Of course, everybody leaves the pit lane together because time is limited and you only get 2 or 3 tyre runs. There were a couple of errors.
Interestingly, talking about that one, that was the 101 into the 16. It's the 16 that's under investigation, which was the slower car on track for effectively blocking.
Well, hang on, there was another slow car in front of him, and he'd just gone by the Marla BMW, which was also going very slowly. But there were yellow flags out, and so he should not have been in any way, shape or form attempting to pass even a near stationary car.
I'm afraid if you ended up paying attention to those yellow flags, then nobody would get a start of a lap in.
Rules are rules. I don't make them. I just enforce them. That's what Eduardo says.
Well, that's what I was going to say.
That's what you were going to say. Oh, my goodness.
Martin Hemming doesn't say that.
I do say... I don't make the rules. All right, so Josh Rogers there. He is the man who was fastest of all, and it was by a very big margin. I mean, a 3-minute 20. The pole lap at Le Mans in LMP2 using ostensibly the same car last year was a 3:24 and change. Wow. The difference is that in R Factor 2, this is a full-fat Oreca 07. So these are the cars that are racing up to 2019 with 50 horsepower more than they've got nowadays, with a low-drag aero kit, which they no longer have this year. They have one aero kit for the whole season. So the cars are compromised now, but even so, in any category, to be 7/10 quicker than your rivals at this level is astonishing. So cars heading out now in Hyperpole, and it is the fastest 6 GTs and the fastest 6 prototypes. And it's not a time session. You get one flying lap. That's it. If you blow it, you've blown it. And so you think qualifying is high pressure, trying to get into Hyperpole. This is where the pressure doubles.
Slipstream is a really big thing around Le Mans, but you don't want to trust in other people's slipstreams. We do have 2 Porsches and 2 Redline cars here. They could, if they want to really risk it, work together and potentially help each other out.
But there is a rule against the slipstreaming off each other, which is a slippery rule. They're not allowed to do it. But,
see what you did.
But they could be... they're on track at the same time, though.
Well, look, they all leave the pits in a rush because there's only 15 minutes to get your lap in. It takes you 4 minutes to get round and get your tyres up to temperature, and then you've got 1 lap.
Porsche are not out on circuit yet.
Well, that's
very true.
Yeah.
This is the thing, is that I think they're kind of, for one, if you've got 7/10 of a gap on everyone, like, fair enough, you can go out whenever you please. Around here, there is this kind of thing, same as like going qualifying at someone like Mons or whatever, of people overthinking it, of being like, but I need the slipstream, I need the slipstream. Now, don't get me wrong, it gains an awful lot of time, but is the slipstream worth the dirty air through the Porsche curves, worth the distraction going into every braking zone? And that's the critical thing that I think some people and teams forget in sim racing and in motorsport as well.
You saw BMW Team Redline's Kevin Siggy there in his rig. He is the first man out in the GTE class, and still both Porsche Coanda LMP cars, Josh Rogers and Matt Brabham, shown as being in them, and they are certainly the guys that set the fast times in qualifying. So they are sitting in the pits waiting for a bit of clear traffic, or clear track rather. So actually, if you wait for everybody to start their quick lap, you know that on your warm-up lap, they won't be holding you up. But the problem then is when you come to start your flying lap, they've done theirs and they're going into the pits. You have to rely on them not mimsing around and being in the wrong place at the wrong time. So it could come back and bite you on the backside.
Just want to be told, by the way, I did just get a clarification. Had Dan Wren rush in to tell me it's actually 2 timed laps.
Two-time laps,
that
okay.
they have in the session. So,
But can they change tyres between those 2 laps?
this is the thing, is I'm not
Quick,
sure how the
done,
lap count,
rush in again.
how the lap count will work. Theoretically, I don't think there is a reason why you couldn't, because of how R-Factor 2 would work. You should be able to. But realistically, with tyre wear around here, I would suspect I would rather do the 2-time laps back-to-back.
Which is what Porsche are going to have to do with only 11 minutes remaining, but maybe Redline have the opportunity. That's why they're in such a rush to get out straight away.
Yeah,
I'm not sure what Porsche are backing themselves into a little bit of a corner, but they've only got 2 laps anyway. But they might leave themselves in a position where they might have basically the entire track to themselves for the most part, and they get to respond to the lap time.
Josh Rogers may possibly have just sat back and gone, lads, only need one.
Yeah.
Actually, interesting, we were looking at the Porsche social media while you were busy watching Porsches being battled all over the place here, and it looks like ex-factory driver and engineer Mark Lieb from the real world Porsche team is in there in the Coanda house as well.
Oh, wow.
So it's not just the Porsche Coanda Esports team, it's hello, we're Porsche. This is everything we have. All the pieces are in the puzzle together. So, you know, Mark's going to be, I'm sure, very, very involved in the LMDH car, the program, and running it in Europe and at Le Mans. So, you know, I don't know whether he's just on a busman's holiday, nothing else to do on a Saturday afternoon or a Friday afternoon and has gone in, but I wouldn't be at all surprised if Porsche are bringing in everything they can bring.
First sectors are in for our 4 LMP cars that are out there at the moment. It's Marcel Cinchik in the R8G car that is 1/1000th of a second faster than Jeffrey Rietveld.
So there's a lifetime in a sport like this. Crikey. It's going to be insanely fun, unless, again, Josh Rogers pulls out the mother and father of all laps like he did before. He's still in the pits. Mac Backham has left the pits, as has Charlie Collins in the GT class, the 77 Proton Coanda car. That was fastest of all in the GT class, but Lewis McGlade's money, metaphorically, obviously, because it's Lewis, is on Kevin Siggy.
Yeah, well, like I say, in each category, I'd still say Kevin Siggy in GTE and then Josh Rogers in LMP. Although I will say, we did just see like Marcel Cinchik setting that fastest first sector, as Ben points out, losing a little bit of time in the second, but nothing major. I would have said, coming into this event, away from everything, I would have said that Marcel Cinchik was pound for pound the fastest driver in this car, and yet still I would have said Porsche. I don't know what it is, but their pace this season, since they've started figuring out this car, especially the last round. I mean, I know, Martin, you went here for Sebring. You were off doing something else.
I was in America, getting cold,
Yeah. They were dominant, beyond dominant. It was absolutely incredible, and I think they've just carried that momentum into this round.
So it was Bennett that was fastest through the second sector of the lap, but as you say, it's really close between those first 3, Redline 1, Redline 2 and R8G8. Not quite as close is Wisniewski in the 53. He's a couple of tenths off, but we are going to see those first laps registered in a few moments' time as those first 3 LMP cars come to the forward chicane. A bit of a lock-up there from Luke Bennett.
Out he comes the final corner then, and Luke Bennett up to the line. Let's get a time on the board, 3:21.894, and I can see, looking in GTs, Charlie Collins has gone quickest through the first sector. Erhan Yayovsky was quickest through there, but look at the top 3 times coming in, 78 thousandths between that. Jeffrey Rietveld goes second and Cinchik goes 3rd place, so very, very close for the LMP2 class.
Wisniewski, so he bailed from his lap.
Yeah.
He's bailed from one of his time lap to come in the pit lane, get fresh tyres, and then get out there. So he obviously, you know, Wisniewski, that was a car that struggled in qualifying here last year, but then of course still finished second, and of course won in that very first running of the Le Mans Virtual. Here's Charlie Collins. His brother Bryn Collins is racing in the 88, the other one of the Proton Commanders that Kevin Van Duren is qualifying, but. See, I always feel with Charlie Collins, I'm like, oh, you know, he's really, really young. You know, oh, his younger brother by like 2 years is racing. I'm like, this is unfair, to be honest.
Yovsky set the bar for GTE, a 3:46.39.
Yep.
Collins was a fraction faster in the first sector, but not as fast in the second sector as he completes that by 0.06 of a second.
Ibrahim Khan has pitted as well for BMW BS competition, and
as has Ziggy, actually.
Yeah, Kevin Ziggy has also gone into the pits. So Charlie Collins, well, Erhan Yayovsky sets the fastest time. Kevin Van Doren just a fraction slower than him. What's that? In fact, almost exactly a second. Yeah. 5 thousandths difference between being a second slower. Lassie Sorensen goes second for ProDrive Firer. That's in their Aston Martin. Again, that car was in the top 3. So Ferrari, Aston, Porsche so far, but we haven't had a lap completed yet by this man, Charlie Collins, who was fastest in GTE in qualifying.
It was very tight, though. It was only 3 thousandths of a second between him and Yovsky.
It was a 888 that ended up on top, wasn't it, by 3 thousandths
yes.
of a second?
It was right at the end. Yeah, it was.
I mean, Yovsky and GTs, I don't know what it is, but him on R-Factor 2, of course, 2-time GT Pro champion is Yovsky. He is very, very fast. He's kind of lost a little bit of his speed in the recent past, but what a way to bring yourself back into it and get ready for a good 2023, then getting a pole position and starting out on the right foot here, but does have to take on this man here, and it's not going to be an easy one.
It's going to be close, isn't it?
Yep.
6 thousandths between them, and it's looked a very, very good last sector as well. A team trying to chase their first ever pole position, so let's see if Collins can do it.
Monsters, the final curbs. You can monster them even more through the last 2. Comes towards the line. Is it Porsche or Ferrari on provisional pole? Ooh. Ferrari for the moment. And he loses 2.5 tenths in the end.
Well, the only element of that final of those 4 corners in the last couple of chicanes that you can't really attack is the final one, because that sausage curb on the inside, in the real world, it takes all the wheels off the car. Here, at least, it bumps you up into the air, so it's not as comfortable as the others.
Wow. Very, very slow outlaps from Porsche Coanda.
Yeah.
I did make a couple of jokes about their speed before and where they find it. I have no words for this. No words, no jokes, no nothing. They are incredibly fast through meticulous preparation for everything. They are not going fast, so they don't put any extra heat, wear, anything into that tyre for this lap. And with the time left, I'm almost thinking, maybe they are just going for 1 lap.
Or back-to-back.
They could do back-to-back.
They won't. They won't get time for 1.
Yeah, I was going to say, they're not going to get time.
It's 3 minutes 20. So there's 4 minutes on the clock.
It's pretty close to the end of the lap.
There's going to be barely 3 minutes 20. And where's the second car?
Yes, it's further. But no, I think that it's behind. I think you will see it come through the background of shot in a second.
So
I think it might be behind.
They are.
You might be right.
You know, they are going to give themselves just enough time. He will have enough time for 2. Here we go. Now he drops the hammer. There's Josh Rogers. Looking like he's still on a pedestrian outlap.
Yeah, but Josh Rogers in the 20 car. Remember, he's swapped over from the 23 during the season. So we're seeing the 20 car on the right and the 23 car starting its lap.
Big laps for Porsche. Big laps for everyone, obviously, in the LMP. If they want to start high up, well, it's to be fair, it's these cars that we're kind of really looking at as being the ones challenging them.
I'm trying to think in that sunlight, and at Le Mans makes it different. The black side of the car, okay, that doesn't particularly like anything. The white side of the car makes me think sort of Dome Racing Team Netherlands from about a decade ago. Is that you don't get many white race cars at Le Mans, and that when you're looking at the crowd side, if you like, drivers left.
That was a black and white checker car, and
it was
like 2,000 euros per square, and you could pay to sponsor it.
That's how Jan Lammers got the budget for it. But yeah, Dome initially had a white car with only a couple of red highlights.
Look at those first sectors as well. Mac Backham and Josh Rogers, both going quickest.
They're going out at the last minute to say, OK, we will be last and fastest, and you will have nowhere to go. You will have no chance to reply.
But everyone else is out on circuit trying at least be on circuit to reply. They are there. And Josh Rogers did get over the line before the 3:23. mark.
Yep.
So in theory could start another lap, but it'd be very, very close.
See, I still think they won't do it, because if they've spent their entire route lap looking after their tyres that much, it tells me that they probably won't be able to do a second time lap at decent speed.
Yeah.
They are just doing the one.
Such confidence. Such confidence.
Unbelievable. Because it's either first or sixth, basically, for them. That's the game they're playing. It's anywhere in between is not acceptable.
Well, you're either going to end up on row 3 of the grid or further forward. You know, either way, it's not bad in qualifying, is it? So, I mean, there's a lot to be gained.
Oh, look at that.
Not
2.5
an awful lot
tenths.
to be lost.
Incredible.
But again, it just shows the level of preparation that clearly they have spent probably several days just simulating what is the best way to do hyperpole.
Again, incredible from Rogers.
Rogers has nibbled a bit more out of his teammate there. The 20 just half a tenth faster than the 23, but this is a 1-2 for Porsche at the moment, locking out the front row and throwing the car into Indianapolis.
Cars sparking away as they're riding so low. In the GT class, Erhan Yayovsky fastest has pitted. Lasse Sorensen third, Kevin Van Doren fourth have also pitted. So Charlie Collins not producing any quicker laps in second fastest. He's in the pits as well. It's down to Kevin Siggy and Ibrahim Khan in the BMWs to see if they can produce anything better.
And that was a good first sector, wasn't it, from Kevin Siggy as well?
Yeah.
Just quicker than Yayovsky, so we could see some changes there. But first of all, I think we're going to see some changes right at the top here.
Josh Rogers, Matt Backham. Matt Backham on a personal best, clearly, but Josh Rogers, purple.
He's flashing his lights. He's getting all the traffic out of the way before he even gets into that chicane. I mean, what an incredible lap.
Yep.
Oh, that might be too much slide, though.
He's behind Josh Rogers anyway.
Backham's going to finish the lap first here.
He will do, and he does. Ahead of Luke Bennett and Jeffrey Rietveld. And it's down then to Josh Rogers to complete a front row lockout for Porsche. And he is up. Purple sector 1, purple sector 2, purple sector 3. Pole in hyperpole to Josh Rogers. And the margin 0.2 of a second ahead of his teammate Luke Bennett, 0.5 back in third in the number 2 Team Redline car.
It is not over yet. We've got 3 cars out on circuit who've just started their laps. They're just through the first sector, and Rietveld in the number 1 Max Verstappen Redline machine is faster in the first sector than the 2 Porsches.
And here's Kevin Siggy in the Redline BMW. Good sector 1, good sector 2, quicker than anything he's done so far.
I've got to say, that sector 2, the problem is the BMW is going to struggle in sector 2. It's not fast in a straight line. It struggles a little bit on the Molson, struggles in the run into Indianapolis. So it makes sense they were okay in the first sector. It should be pretty good, though, through the Porsche curves, ironically. But I don't know. I feel like I might have backed the wrong horse on that one with BMW, but still, I've got faith in Kevin Siggy in his qualifying record. He at least needs to get a top 3 to keep that one going. There is Jeff Rietveld looking as happy as ever.
I'm not sure he's going to. That middle sector is 0.4 off what Yayovsky and Collins can do, and it's even slower than Lasse Sorensen in the Aston Martin. So he's got to find a lot in the final sector.
Yeah,
I still believe. He can't break that record of always qualifying in the top 3 here, as that was the AMG Williams car going up into 5th position. Nikodem Vishnevsky finishes his qualifying session, and 5th is as good as it's going to get.
Yeah.
Oh, it's close, isn't it, as well?
And he's the only prototype who's taken the flag so far.
Oh, it's so close.
Very close. 67 thousandths.
Wow.
So Rietveld still has a chance here to potentially disturb that 1-2 for the Porsche team.
And Bennett is not that far behind. We're not seeing Bennett's lap, though, but he's only 100ths of a second slower than Rietveld. These two could either split the Porsches or steal the front row lockout from them.
And Porsche left themselves nowhere to go. There was a big slide there, and here comes Kevin Siggy. Where is he going to end up? He goes second. Well, he's in the top 3, but there is still Ibrahim Khan's lap to complete.
That was a great final sector. 0.4 of a second faster than Charlie Collins.
Well, he needed to, because as you said, he dropped the car, dropped 0.4 in the second sector, which is predominantly the Mulsanne.
What did I say? The record? Of course he was going to get
Jeffrey Rietveld. Was that big slide enough to cost him? This could still be very close. I mean, if Redline steal it now from Porsche, with Porsche being super confident and just doing that one lap, and the other Porsche laps, by the way, Rogers and Brabham are super pedestrian on the way back. Nothing in the gravel, giving it everything across the line. It is not enough.
See if Revered can do anything, though. He's going to come out of the final corner. It's much tidier for Revered, for the #1, for the champion car. Wow!
No, lost too much at the end of that lap.
Lost 4 tenths in the last sector.
Porsche Coanda, I mean, they're fast in their namesake, going through the Porsche cars. That's where they're wrestling so much time out. It's where they did when they were racing in the Porsches, of course, in the first Le Mans version.
But we also saw Jeffrey Rewell sliding wide out of Arnage. We saw mistakes on the final element of the track, and you don't, you know, there's so many big fast corners here like Indianapolis and so on, and the irony is that you lose much more in the really slow stuff like Arnage than you ever gain in the quick stuff.
And we've got so excited just now about how quick these cars are over one lap, but they've got to do 390 laps.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the record in real life is 397. That's why studio 397. But I think in sim race, I can't remember what they were in the previous one. I'm pretty sure it's not crested 400.
It's not in the
390. Oh, it is.
Big book of business.
The big book's down here, and I've got to go and grab it. You carry on, lads.
It's popping up the studio.
You carry on, lads.
And, let's just point out that the fastest lap in Hyperpole, 3:21.392. That was Josh Rogers. Fastest lap in overall qualifying, 3:20.524. Wow. Josh Rogers was 8 tenths slower in a Hyperpole, everything on the line, no excuses, single lap than he was in a normal qualifying lap.
I think it shows just how absolutely awesome that lap was in qualifying. We knew it.
Yeah. Well, there's the H24 hydrogen-powered car that will be our leading car. That will lead the field around tomorrow. That is the pace car, if you like. And going out into Hyperpole, fastest 6 cars in GTE, fastest 6 cars in LMP. One driver, no excuses. For the drivers, I mean, in the real world, when this was introduced, suddenly everybody was going, oh my word, this is so fantastic. One single lap, low fuel, brand new tyres, no nonsense, and Le Mans. I mean, there can almost, Indy or Monaco, you know, that's it. Those are the 3 single laps where you want a nice clear track all to yourself, and I'm sure everybody here has really just put their heart and soul into trying to grab this, because pole position at Le Mans might not win you the race, but boy, it's a big thing to write home about. This is the 20 Porsche of Josh Rogers flying across the line to start his lap, and they came out a long while behind everybody else. They left themselves with nowhere to go. Yeah, he just produced the goods yet again. Well, I mean, entertaining stuff. And Ben, with the Porsches locking out the front row, Redline on row 2, we've got an awful lot of racing to do tomorrow. But I mean, look at the gaps, 5th to 6th, a whole 6,000ths of a second. I mean, you know, how's that even possible?
That is quite a grid. We've got works cars from Porsche. We've got the Williams that's won before. And interesting to see a Ferrari on the top of the GTE classification, 2 tenths ahead of BMW Team Redline, that almost have one hand on that championship trophy.
Yeah. Basically, it's theirs to lose. But tomorrow's a very, very different day. By the way, I have consulted. I'm just going to show on
the big book of business.
That is information. 407 laps it was last year, and it was 371 in the first running of the Le Mans version. So we have crested the 400 margin, and I'd suspect on the pace that we're running, which I think might be it's in the same vein, maybe slightly faster than last year. I would suspect, and yes, it is in there before you ask, somewhere. I'd suspect we're probably going to be aiming for about 407 to 410.
Well,
but I heard there was going to be rain.
There is some potential of some rain in the air.
But don't forget, in the first virtual Le Mans 24-hour race, we had quite a long red flag period, and that obviously means that you can't be lapping at that stage. We had none last year. Again, like real weather storms and real weather red flags. I mean, you know, it always rains at Le Mans. Sometimes it really rains. You know, all things are possible. But, yeah, last year was a new distance record, and we'll wait to see if that is the case. And, boys, this is the pole lap from Hyperpole. Josh Rogers just doing what he does best.
I think what's fascinating about this is just how aggressive you can be. And look at the change of direction just through those first two corners. We were looking and talking with Alex Brundle, who will be joining us on broadcast, about the different driving styles. And it's just incredible how positive the front end is on this car. The rear end is all over the place, sliding around.
Yeah.
And he said he was talking to Danny Juncadella about this, and he said, I wince every time I hammer a curb in the sim. And Juncadella saying, yeah, me too, because in the real world, you know you can't do that. So when you see Alex doing his lap of the track, he's riding up the curbs like a real race driver would, not smashing them as if they don't exist, as you can in R-Factor 2. So, I mean, that was, that was one of the many different things that pro racing drivers discovered coming into the first Le Mans 24-hour virtual, is how aggressive you can be here. I mean, this earns you so much lap time compared to the real world. You can just ignore the curbs because they don't spit you into the scenery the way the real life ones do.
He carried so much speed into that first chicane.
I mean, is anyone else sort of a little bit terrified about what we're going to see in the Porsche curves, if this is how fast he's going in the sector where he wasn't faster than everyone else?
The second chicane is an even quicker approach than into the first chicane. Look at this. I mean, he's like flat out in top and barely even slows down.
It's perfect. Like, I know obviously it's a pole lap at Le Mans, of course it's going to be perfect, but it's the level of precision, the level of speed to be able to do that and to have the confidence to do this in one lap in that qualifying session, to have that as being your only lap.
No safety net. Actually, what would be really interesting is to have Josh Rogers talking us through it and going, could have been a little bit later there. Just wide here, not quite wide enough, just didn't take enough of that curve. I mean, because no matter how brilliant it is, nobody gets out. I mean, really, nobody gets out and goes, okay, absolutely nothing about that could be improved on, because that's not their mentality. No matter how good they are, they always think they can improve on it.
Yeah, there's never a perfect lap or a perfect race, is there?
You're always chasing another 1,000.
Yeah.
Let's not forget also that there is no parc fermé between qualifying and the race here. They can put a completely different setup, and will put a completely different setup for the race tomorrow, because this setup would destroy the tyres in about 2 laps. It's so positive on the front. Wherever he wants that nose to go, it's going. But that means the rears are scrubbing a lot.
Yeah, and of course, this is a completely different test they would have done. You're testing just for qualifying, and then, of course, you're doing race stints as well. And those different driving styles, you've got to switch from one to the other, and they can do it very, very easily.
And that's why that outlap was so slow, because they knew they were going to destroy the tyres like this. But, oh, here we go.
That was flat.
Well, it's all flat, and here...
That's flat.
Little brake, and then down a gear. And then pick up the throttle again, and I can't.
Oh my goodness me!
And look how little of the runoff area he's using as well.
The change of direction is amazing.
Yeah. That car is absolutely stuck to the road. What an incredible lap!
Oh, look at that!
Again, attacks the sausage curb in a way that would have seen him in the crowd on the left-hand side in the real world. But and again. It's not about what a real car would do. It's about what you can do in R-Factor 2. And these, like in the real world, these guys are whittling down the tolerances to absolutely zero. And that's what makes this so enthralling, is that no matter how good these drivers were, particularly the pro sim racers, coming to Le Mans Virtual 2 years ago, they're exponentially better now, because so much more is going into this.
Let's not forget that in the sim racing world, you do not race and drive through the seat of your pants, like we say in the real world. You have to feel everything through the wheel, but also use a lot more visual. And through those Porsche curves, and through especially the Ford chicane there, where the car is floating and bouncing all over the place from the attack of those curves, to know exactly where the car's going to be and what it's going to do on the next bump really is just incredible.
You need a direct drive for sure. That's why there's a good chance. You've got a chance to win yourself a Thrustmaster T818 of their new direct drive, which, like I say, it's fantastic. They've got that level of feedback coming from basically just one peripheral. There are a few things that are kind of changing the world of sim racing, where there might be some other ways of doing it. And of course, you've got motion rigs and stuff like that. But you will not see many big teams using things like motion rigs. They will typically just rely on the direct drive and the force feedback from that, because it's the most reliable, it's the most consistent, and it's the one that they are the most used to.
And it's the consistency. I mean, racing drivers can drive cars on the limit in the way that normal punters can't, because they constantly repeat avoiding making the mistakes that you and I would make and then just stand on the middle pedal and disappear into the scenery. And it's the same with sim racing. The more you do it, you know, you're talking about flying over the curbs and knowing where you're going to land. You've done it 1,000 times. You know exactly what cause gives you that effect. And it's exactly the same as a real-world racing driver. Yes, they feel the car through the seat of their pants, but it's knowing from experience what that feeling leads to. That's the only slight difference. And as you say, yeah, the pro racing drivers, the real-world racing drivers, their biggest conversion is learning to do everything with the 6 inches between your ears as well as the rest of your body. You can't use the rest of your body. It's all about mental processing speed, and that's what makes these sim racers in their own realm exactly the same as pro racers like Max Verstappen. You know, it's that relentless ability to just bang in lap after lap after lap after lap that is just the same and just as fast. And they're going to need to do that because tomorrow, when we start our race, they have 24 hours, 4 drivers, and they will have to be absolutely on the pace and on the money all the way through. We're on air at 12:15 Greenwich Mean Time. The race starts at 1300 GMT. Don't miss it. We'll see you then.